What would you do if your own child pointed at you in a courtroom and accused you of stealing $250,000? I was seconds away from losing everything: my home, my late husband's legacy, my dignity. But I had a secret that would make that judge's jaw drop, and my son wish he'd never dragged his own mother into that cold Richmond courthouse. The courtroom in Richmond, Virginia smelled like old wood polish and broken promises. February frost clung to the tall windows, making everything feel even colder than it already was. I sat on that hard wooden bench, my hands twisted together in my lap, so tight my wedding ring cut into my finger. 67 years old, and I never thought I'd see the inside of a courtroom, especially not like this. Across the aisle sat Marcus, my son, my only child. The baby I'd nursed through colic and chickenpox, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike in Windsor Farms Park, the young man whose college tuition I'd helped pay by working double shifts at the company. He wouldn't look at me, just stared straight ahead like I was a stranger who'd cut him off in traffic. Next to him sat his lawyer, David Walsh. That man wore a suit so expensive it probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Charcoal gray with a shine that caught the overhead lights. He had that look, you know, the one where a man's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes. The kind of smile that says he knows exactly how much he's charging per hour, and he's worth every penny of it. But it was the woman in the row behind Marcus who made my stomach turn. Elena, my daughter-in-law of 7 years. She sat there in a cream-colored designer dress, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect chignon diamond earrings catching the light. Those earrings probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 6 months. Her face was a mask of concern, but her eyes? Lord, her eyes were cold as January ice. Judge Patricia Stone entered, and we all stood. She was a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and reading glasses perched on her nose. The kind of woman who looked like she'd heard every lie and excuse in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. "Please be seated," she said, her voice carrying that courtroom authority that makes your spine straighten automatically. Case number 2024 CV 8847, Martinez versus Martinez. Petition to invalidate last will and testament of Robert Martinez, deceased. My heart squeezed at the sound of Robert's name. My husband. Gone almost a year now, and some days I still reached across the bed expecting to feel his warmth there. Walsh stood up, buttoning his suit jacket with practiced ease. "Your Honor, my client Marcus Martinez brings this petition with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. The will in question leaves the entirety of Mr. Robert Martinez's estate, including his 60% controlling share in Martinez Engineering Solutions, to the defendant Viviana Martinez." He said my name like it was a crime. "My client does not contest that his mother deserves to be cared for." Walsh continued pacing slightly. The man knew how to work a room. "However, we have discovered evidence of serious financial misconduct that calls into question Mrs. Martinez's fitness to manage such significant assets." I felt my face flush hot. Misconduct. What was he talking about? Walsh pulled a manila folder from his briefcase with a flourish. "Your Honor, on March 1st, 2023, just 2 weeks before Mr. Robert Martinez's passing, a transfer of $250,000 was made from the company's operating account to Mrs. Viviana Martinez's personal checking account." The courtroom went quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "The transfer," Walsh continued, "was authorized using Mrs. Martinez's digital credentials. It was labeled simply personal withdrawal. No business purpose, no documentation. Just $250,000 disappearing from the company that Mr. Martinez spent 30 years building." He paused for effect, letting that number hang in the air like smoke. "Your Honor, this isn't just about a disputed will. This is about financial elder abuse in reverse. About a woman who we believe manipulated a dying man and stole from the family business in his final days." My hands started shaking so badly I had to sit on them. "No," I whispered, but no one heard me. Walsh turned, and for the first time he looked directly at me. "Mrs. Martinez, can you explain this transaction?" Every eye in the courtroom turned my way. The judge, the court reporter, the bailiff by the door. Marcus finally looked at me too, but his face was unreadable. I don't..." My voice came out scratchy. I cleared my throat and tried again. "I didn't make that transaction. I don't know anything about it." "You don't remember withdrawing $250,000? Walsh's eyebrows rose. "That seems like the kind of thing one would remember." "I didn't withdraw anything." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I never touched that money. I don't even know how to make transfers that large. Robert always handled the banking system at the company. Walsh pulled out another paper. "This is the digital authorization record, Your Honor. It shows that the transfer was initiated from Mrs. Martinez's verified email account using her registered password at 11:47 p.m. on March 1st. The IP address traces to the Martinez family home in Windsor Farms." My mouth went dry. That's not possible. I was home that night, yes, but I didn't." "Mrs. Martinez," Judge Stone interrupted, her voice not unkind but firm. "Do you have legal representation?" I looked around as if a lawyer might materialize from thin air. "No, Your Honor. I didn't think I'd need one. This is my son. I thought—" I stopped, not wanting to cry in front of all these people. The judge removed her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Mr. Walsh, I'm going to grant a continuance. Mrs. Martinez clearly needs time to obtain counsel and prepare a proper defense." "Your Honor, we're ready to proceed," Walsh protested. "I'm sure you are, Mr. Walsh. But I'm not going to allow these proceedings to continue when one party is clearly unprepared. We'll reconvene in 3 weeks. She banged her gavel. Court adjourned. I sat there as people started filing out, unable to move. $250,000. The words kept echoing in my head. I could never. Where would I even begin to explain something I didn't do, Mom? I looked up. Marcus stood a few feet away. Up close, I could see the dark circles under his eyes, the way his jaw was clenched tight. This close, he looked like his father, same strong nose, same broad shoulders. But Robert had never looked at me with such coldness. "Marcus, I didn't—" "Save it for your lawyer." He turned to leave, then stopped. "You know what hurts the most? Dad trusted you. He left you everything because he believed in you. And this is how you repay that trust." "I didn't take any money." My voice broke. "How can you believe I would do that?" But he was already walking away, Elena's hand on his arm leading him toward the exit like he was the victim here. I gathered my purse with trembling hands. The leather was worn soft from years of use, not like Elena's designer bags that probably cost a month of my late husband's salary back when we were starting out. I made my way to the corridor, keeping my head down, hoping no one would stop me. Outside, Richmond's February cold hit me like a slap. I pulled my coat tighter, a good coat but 10 years old at least, and hurried to my car. Once inside, I locked the doors and just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, trying to remember how to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from my friend Margaret. How did it go? "Call me when you can." I couldn't call her. Not yet. If I tried to speak, I'd fall apart completely. Instead, I drove home on autopilot, barely seeing the familiar streets of Richmond passing by. The bare trees, the old brick buildings, the James River rolling dark and cold under the bridges. This city had been my home for 40 years. The place where Robert and I had built our life, raised our son, created something meaningful. And now my own child thought I was a thief. I need to take you back. Because to understand how I ended up in that courtroom, you need to understand where we started. Richmond, Virginia, July 1985. I was 27 years old, working as a third-grade teacher at a public school in Church Hill. The pay was modest, but I loved it. Loved the smell of crayons and chalk dust, loved watching children's faces light up when they finally understood long division or finished their first chapter book. That summer, the school district hosted a charity fundraiser for new library books. Teachers, parents, local business owners, everyone came together in the high school gymnasium, decorated with paper streamers and donated flowers. That's where I met Robert Martinez. He was 30, an engineer at a small mechanical contracting firm. Quiet, a little awkward in his pressed white shirt and the tie that looked like he'd wrestled it into submission. He stood by the punch bowl, clearly uncomfortable with small talk, reading the informational pamphlets about the library fund like they were the most fascinating things he'd ever seen. "They misspelled acquisitions," I said, nodding at the pamphlet in his hand. He looked up startled, then checked the word. "You're right. Acquisitions. They use 2 S's. I'm a teacher," I explained. Spelling errors jump out at me like flashing neon signs. He smiled, then a real smile that crinkled the corners of his brown eyes. "Robert Martinez," he said, extending his hand. "Viviana Delgado," I replied, shaking it. We talked for 2 hours straight. About books, about Richmond, about his work designing HVAC systems for commercial buildings, more interesting than it sounded. I promise, about my students and their wild imaginations. He walked me to my car when the event ended, and I knew the way you sometimes just know that this was the beginning of something important. We married a year later. Small ceremony, just family and close friends at St. Mary's Catholic Church. My mother cried. Robert's father gave a toast in Spanish that made everyone laugh, even though half of us didn't understand all the words. We moved into a tiny apartment in Church Hill. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen so small we had to take turns cooking. Our furniture was a mix of hand-me-downs and yard sale finds. The couch had a spring that poked through if you sat on the left side. The dining table wobbled unless you folded a napkin under one leg. But it was ours. Marcus came in 1987. Born on a Tuesday morning in September, arriving 2 weeks early like he was eager to get started. 7 pounds 4 ounces. Bald as an egg. He had Robert's nose and my dark eyes. When the nurse placed him in my arms, I felt my whole world shift on its axis. Everything we did after that was for him. In 1990, Robert took a leap. He'd been working for the same firm for 8 years, watching his designs get credit under someone else's name, watching other people profit from his ideas. So he started his own consulting business, Martinez Engineering Solutions. Those first years nearly broke us. Robert worked from our 2nd bedroom, which we'd converted into a makeshift office. He'd get up at 5 in the morning, work until 7 to get Marcus ready for daycare, then work until midnight. Sometimes later, I'd wake at 2 a.m. to find him hunched over blueprints, calculator in hand, cold coffee forgotten on the desk. "Come to bed," I'd whisper. "Just one more calculation," he'd say. "Always one more." The business grew slowly. 1 client, then 2, then 5. Small jobs at first, reviewing plans for a restaurant's ventilation system, consulting on a warehouse renovation. But Robert's reputation grew. He was thorough, reliable, honest in a business where corners were often cut. By Marcus's 5th birthday, we needed help. Real help. "I'll do it," I said one night over dinner. Robert looked up from his spaghetti. "Do what?" "Quit teaching. Help you run the office." "Viv, no. You love teaching." "I do," I admitted. "But I love our family more. In this business, it's growing too fast for you to handle alone. You need someone to manage the paperwork, deal with invoices, schedule appointments. You need an office manager. We can hire someone. We can't afford to hire someone yet. Not really. Not someone good." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Let me do this. For us. For our future." So I did. That fall, I gave notice at the school. My principal hugged me and cried. "You're one of the best teachers we've ever had," she said. "I'll be teaching from home now," I told her. Different subject, but still important. I took over the business side of Martinez Engineering, learned accounting software, managed client relationships, wrote proposals, chased down late payments, renewed licenses and permits, ordered supplies, scheduled inspections. Robert designed. I made sure everything else ran smoothly. We never put me on the official payroll. "It's our business," I told Robert. "Our money goes into one pot. We don't need to complicate it with separate salaries." Looking back, maybe that was naive, but it felt right at the time. We were partners, 50-50. What was his was mine, and what was mine was his. By 2000, we'd moved to a real office space, hired our first employee, a draftsman named Tom, who could turn Robert's rough sketches into professional drawings. Then an accountant, a project manager, an admin assistant. By 2005, Martinez Engineering had 30 employees and annual revenues in the 7 figures. We bought the house in Windsor Farms, a beautiful brick colonial with 4 bedrooms, a proper front porch, and a backyard big enough for Marcus to practice baseball. My mother came to visit when we moved in. She walked from room to room, touching the crown molding, admiring the hardwood floors. "You did this," she said to me in the kitchen. "You and Roberto. From nothing to this." "Robert did this," I corrected. "His design's his reputation." "Mijita," she said, using her pet name for me. "A man can be the best engineer in the world, but without someone to hold it all together, the business falls apart. You held it together. Don't forget that." I think about her words a lot now. Marcus grew up in that house, went to the best private school in Richmond, had piano lessons, baseball camp, summer trips to the beach. We gave him everything we never had, everything we'd worked so hard to achieve. Maybe that was our mistake. Marcus was 10 when I first noticed the change. It was subtle at first. Small things, like the way he looked at his friend Tyler's new bike, a top-of-the-line mountain bike with 21 gears and shock absorbers. Marcus had a perfectly good bike. We'd bought it new the year before, but it wasn't the same as Tyler's. "Why can't I have a bike like that?" he asked at dinner. "Your bike works fine," Robert said, not looking up from his pork chops. "But Tyler's has suspension." "Tyler's parents have different priorities than we do," I explained gently. "We're saving money for your college fund. That's more important than a fancy bike." He'd looked down at his plate jaw, set in a way that reminded me uncomfortably of my mother when she disapproved of something. "Everyone at school has nicer stuff than me," he muttered. "That's not true," I said. "And even if it were, we don't measure our worth by our possessions." But I could see it eating at him. This sense that he was somehow less than his peers because we didn't buy him every expensive thing he wanted. At 13, it got worse. All his friends had name-brand clothes, Abercrombie Polo, the labels that screamed wealth and status. Marcus came home from school one day and emptied his backpack onto the kitchen counter with more force than necessary. "I need new clothes," he announced. "You just got new clothes for school," I pointed out. "These." He gestured vaguely at his perfectly nice khakis and button-down shirt. "Everyone thinks I'm poor." "We're not poor, Marcus. We're comfortable. There's a difference. The Harrisons have a beach house. The Montgomerys have a boat. Jake's dad bought him a car for his 16th birthday, a BMW. Marcus, we have money," he exploded. "Dad's company makes tons of money. Why do we have to live like we're broke?" Robert had come into the kitchen, then drawn by the raised voices. "Lower your voice," he said quietly. That was Robert's way. He never yelled, but you listened anyway. Marcus glared at his father. "Why do you make me feel poor when we're not?" "We're not making you feel anything," Robert said. "You're choosing to compare yourself to others instead of being grateful for what you have. What do I have? A house that's smaller than all my friends' houses, a car that's 10 years old, clothes from the regular mall instead of designer stores." "You have parents who love you," I said, my voice shaking. "A roof over your head, food on the table, a college fund that will let you go anywhere you want without debt. Those are things many people would kill for." "Well, maybe I want more than just the basics," Marcus shot back. He stormed upstairs, and I heard his bedroom door slam hard enough to rattle the windows. I looked at Robert. "Where did we go wrong?" "We didn't," he said, but his eyes were troubled. "He's just at that age. He'll grow out of it." But I wasn't so sure. The teenage years were hard. Marcus did well in school. He was smart. I'll give him that. Straight A's honor roll student council. But there was this edge to him. This sense that he felt entitled to things he hadn't earned. When he turned 16, we bought him a reliable used Honda. Safe, fuel-efficient, perfect for a new driver. He barely thanked us. "Jake got a BMW," he said, looking at the Honda like it was a punishment. "Jake's father is a surgeon," Robert replied evenly. "And we're not the Harrisons. We have different values." Marcus had driven away in that Honda with his jaw clenched, and I'd wondered then if we'd somehow failed him. If in trying to teach him the value of money and hard work, we'd instead made him resent us for not giving him more. When he went to Duke University in 2005, we were proud. Duke, a top-tier school. He wanted to study business. "I'm going to make real money," he told us. Not just comfortable money, real wealth. Those 4 years he came home less and less. Christmas, maybe a long weekend in summer. He had internships, he said. Networking opportunities. Building his future. When he did come home, he'd walk through the house with this critical eye like he was appraising everything and finding it lacking. "You should renovate the kitchen," he said once sophomore year. "Granite countertops would increase the resale value." "We're not planning to sell," I said. "Still, it would be an investment." "Marcus, we're comfortable as we are." He'd shrugged. "Your choice. But you're sitting on a gold mine with this house and the business. You could be living a lot better." I'd wanted to shake him, wanted to sit him down and explain that comfort wasn't about granite countertops or luxury cars. It was about security, about knowing you could weather a storm, about building something lasting. But I'd stayed quiet, hoping he'd mature with time. After graduation, he came to work at Martinez Engineering. Robert was thrilled, his son following in his footsteps, learning the family business. "This will be yours someday," Robert told him that first day, showing him around the expanded office we'd moved into. 50 employees now, 2 floors, state-of-the-art design software. Marcus had nodded, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. Not pride, not excitement. Calculation. He worked hard, I'll give him that. Put in long hours. learned the business inside and out. By 2015, he was managing major accounts, bringing in new clients. But there was something missing, some warmth, some passion. Robert designed because he loved it, loved solving problems, loved creating systems that worked efficiently and elegantly. Marcus worked because it was profitable, because it was his ticket to the life he'd always wanted. In 2018, he met Elena. She was a marketing executive for a tech startup. Beautiful, polished, sophisticated. She wore designer clothes and drove a luxury sedan and talked about personal branding and networking capital. The first time Marcus brought her to dinner, she'd walked through our home with that same appraising eye Marcus had developed. "This is such a charming neighborhood," she'd said. Charming, the word people use when they mean quaint or outdated. Over dinner, she'd asked pointed questions about the business. Revenue, growth trajectory, Robert's succession plans. "Have you thought about expanding into other markets?" she asked. "Charlotte is booming, so is Atlanta." "We like being based in Richmond," Robert said mildly. "This is our home." "Of course," Elena said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Home is important, but so is growth." After they left, I'd turned to Robert. "What do you think?" He'd been quiet for a long moment. "I think she sees dollar signs instead of people. But Marcus seems happy." "Does he?" Robert had asked. "Or does he seem like he finally found someone who thinks the same way he does about money?" They married in 2018. Big wedding at a country club, the kind of wedding that cost more than our first house. Marcus and Elena paid for most of it. Marcus's salary at the company was generous, but we contributed what we could. At the wedding, Elena's friends had monopolized the conversation, talking about investments and real estate and 5-year plans. I'd felt like a relic from another era. "Your dress is lovely," one of them had said to me with the kind of smile that implied the opposite. I'd looked down at my dress a nice department store find appropriate for a mother of the groom. But next to their designer gowns, I felt dowdy and old. That was when it really started, I think. That feeling of being diminished, of being seen as less than. Not by my son, not yet, but by his wife and her circle. And slowly, Marcus started seeing me through Elena's eyes too. Robert's cough started in January 2020, just a persistent cough, nothing dramatic. "Probably allergies," he said, waving off my concern. "You know how dry the office air gets in winter." But it didn't go away. By March, he was coughing so hard at night that neither of us could sleep. I'd lie awake listening to his body shake with each cough, feeling helpless. "You're seeing a doctor," I finally said. Not a question. An order. The X-ray showed shadows on his lungs. The CT scan confirmed it. Stage 3 non-small cell lung cancer. Robert had never smoked a day in his life. "Sometimes it just happens," the oncologist said with practiced sympathy. "Environmental exposure, genetic factors. We may never know why." We started chemo in April. Robert lost his hair, lost weight, lost that vital energy that had always defined him. But he kept working, kept going to the office when he could, kept reviewing designs even when he was too weak to hold a pencil without his hand shaking. Marcus visited every week at first. He'd sit with Robert, talk about the business, show him quarterly reports on his tablet. But Elena rarely came. "I'm swamped at work," she'd say. "You understand." By fall, the treatments weren't working as well as hoped. The cancer was aggressive, the doctors said, responding to treatment but not going into remission. "We'll try a different protocol," the oncologist said, but I could see the truth in her eyes. This was a delaying action, not a cure. Robert knew too. He was an engineer, he understood odds and projections. In January 2021, he sat me down at our kitchen table. The same oak table we'd bought 30 years ago, scarred now with decades of use. Homework had been done at this table. Bills paid. Meals shared. A life lived. "We need to talk about the will," he said. "Robert Viv." His hand covered mine. His skin was papery thin, now veins prominent. "We need to do this." So we did. He called Theodore Grant, a lawyer he'd worked with for years on business contracts. Theodore came to the house with his briefcase and his laptop set up at our dining room table. "I want to make sure Viviana is protected," Robert said. "Everything goes to her. The house, the savings, my 60% stake in the company." "What about Marcus?" Theodore asked. "He already has 40% of the company. He's drawing a 6-figure salary. He'll be fine." Robert squeezed my hand. "Viviana gave up her career for our business. She worked without salary for years. She deserves this. Marcus already knew the company would stay 60-40. Robert had told him years ago when he first gave Marcus the 40% stake a graduation gift when he came to work full-time. But I knew he hoped, maybe expected that split to change when Robert passed. I want to do something else, Robert said to Theodore. I want to record a video, explaining my reasoning, to avoid any misunderstandings. So we did. Robert sat in his study surrounded by the books and blueprints that had defined his professional life and spoke to the camera. I sat off to the side, dabbing at my eyes with a tissue. He explained his wishes. Explained that the 60-40 split wasn't about favoritism, it was about recognizing my contribution to building the company. He looked into that camera and said, "My wife deserves every penny. She earned it." Theodore saved the video to a USB drive, gave Robert one copy, kept another for his records. "Anything else?" Theodore asked. Robert looked at me. I saw something in his eyes then. Something troubled. "Yes," he said. "One more thing. I want to give you a sealed letter. Instructions that should only be opened if Marcus contests the will." I'd frowned. "Robert, why would Marcus—" "Just a precaution, Viv." But his jaw was set in a way I recognized. He knew something. Something he wasn't telling me. After Theodore left, I'd asked him, "What's going on?" "Nothing. I'm just being thorough. You know me." He'd smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Robert had always been a planner, always prepared for worst-case scenarios. I'd assumed this was just more of the same. I wish I'd pushed harder. Asked more questions. February 2021 was the hardest month. Robert was in and out of the hospital, his body slowly surrendering to the disease it couldn't fight. Marcus came by less frequently now. "Work is crazy," he'd say. "Elena and I are dealing with some financial stress. If you need help," I'd started once. "We're fine, Mom." Sharp, dismissive. "Just busy." But I'd seen the strain around his eyes. The way he and Elena would whisper in corners when they did visit. The way Elena would look around our home with that calculating expression I'd learned to recognize. On March 15th, 2023, Robert passed away in our bedroom with me holding his hand. Marcus arrived 20 minutes later. Elena wasn't with him. "I'm sorry," he'd said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "I'm so sorry, Mom." I'd opened my arms and he'd let me hold him for a moment. Just a moment. Then he'd stepped back, wiping his eyes quickly. Was he in pain?" "No. The morphine kept him comfortable. He just slipped away." Marcus had nodded, looking around the room like he didn't know what to do with his hands. "He loved you so much," I said. "You know that, right?" Yeah, I know." But his voice sounded hollow. The funeral was 3 days later. The church was packed, colleagues, clients, friends from 40 years in Richmond. People I hadn't seen in decades came to pay respects. Marcus delivered the eulogy. He spoke about Robert's integrity, his dedication, his brilliance as an engineer. It was a beautiful speech. But listening to it, I felt like he was talking about a stranger. A respected stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. Elena sat in the front row in a black designer dress, drying her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. But I never saw actual tears. After the funeral, people came back to our house. Margaret and some other friends had organized food coffee, all the logistics I couldn't handle. I moved through the crowd in a daze, accepting condolences, hugging people whose names I couldn't quite remember. Elena cornered me in the kitchen. "Viviana," she said, her voice low, "we need to talk about the house." "The house? It's so big for one person. Have you thought about downsizing? Something more manageable?" I'd stared at her. My husband had been in the ground for less than 6 hours. "This is my home," I said slowly. "I'm not selling it." "Of course not now," she said quickly. "I just meant eventually, when you're ready. Marcus and I would be happy to help you find something smaller, maybe a nice condo, something with less maintenance." "Thank you, but I'll stay here." Her smile tightened. "Well, the offer stands. We just want what's best for you." She'd walked away, leaving me standing by the coffee maker, my hands shaking with an emotion I couldn't quite name. Not grief. Not anymore. Anger. The will reading was 2 weeks later. Theodore Grant's office, all leather chairs and mahogany furniture. Marcus sat on one side of the desk, Elena next to him. I sat on the other. Theodore read through the document. The house to me, the savings accounts to me, Robert's 60% of the company to me. I watched Marcus's face as Theodore read, watched his jaw clench tighter and tighter, watched Elena's hand find his knee under the table and squeeze. That's everything, Theodore said. Viviana, you'll have controlling interest in Martinez Engineering. Marcus retains his 40%. The company will continue to be family-owned. Controlled by Mom, Marcus said. Not a question, a statement. Yes, Theodore confirmed. And the house, the savings, everything personal. All to your mother, yes. Marcus had laughed, a short, bitter sound. Of course. Your father wanted to ensure your mother was provided for, Theodore said gently. She'll be provided for, but so could we have been. He'd stood abruptly. Come on, Elena, we're done here. Marcus, I'd started. Congratulations, Mom, you got everything. They'd left Elena throwing one last calculated look over her shoulder. I'd sat in that leather chair, papers scattered across Theodore's desk, and felt the first real stirring of fear. The next month was strange. Quiet. Marcus stopped returning my calls. I'd text him just checking in, how are you, and get one-word responses. Fine. Busy, Z. Later. I tried to throw myself into understanding the company finances. Rosa Garcia, our accountant who'd been with us for 20 years, walked me through everything. You've always been involved, she said kindly. You know this business as well as anyone. Robert handled the technical side. I managed operations. And operations is what keeps a company running. She'd patted my hand. You'll be fine, Viviana. But I wasn't so sure. Not because I doubted my abilities, but because I could feel something shifting. Some undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. In May, Marcus sent an email. Not a call, an email. Mom, Elena and I think it would be best if you stepped back from active management of the company. I can handle day-to-day operations. You can remain as a silent partner, collect your share of profits, make major strategic decisions if needed, but let me run things. I'd read that email 3 times, each time feeling my anger build. Silent partner. In the company I'd helped build from nothing. I'd called him, straight to voicemail. I'd driven to his house, a beautiful new construction in an upscale neighborhood. Elena answered the door. Viviana, what a surprise. I need to talk to Marcus. He's not here. He's at the office. Then I'll talk to him there. I turned to leave. Wait. Elena had stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind her. We need to clear the air. This tension isn't healthy. What tension? You know what I'm talking about. Marcus's email. He's just trying to protect you. Protect me. From stress. From responsibility. You're 67, Viviana. You should be enjoying retirement, not worrying about company operations. I'm not worried. I'm capable. No one's saying you're not capable. Her voice had that patronizing tone you'd use with a child. But Robert's death was traumatic. You're grieving. This isn't the time to be making major business decisions. Robert trusted me with this. Robert was dying. She'd said it gently, but the words landed like a slap. People make emotional decisions when they're facing death. That doesn't mean those decisions are sound. I'd left without another word, driven straight to the office, found Marcus in Robert's old office, his office now apparently because he'd moved all his things in. We need to talk, I'd said from the doorway. He'd looked up from his computer. Mom, I didn't know you were coming by. You don't get to push me out, Marcus. I'm not pushing you out, I'm trying to help. By making me a silent partner, by suggesting I'm too old or too grief-stricken to manage the business I helped build. He'd sighed. That's not what I said. That's exactly what Elena said. Is she speaking for you now? Don't drag Elena into this. She's already in it. She's been in it since the funeral, trying to convince me to sell my home, give up my role in the company. Maybe because those would be smart moves. He'd stood up and I'd seen real anger in his face for the first time. Maybe because you're sitting on assets worth millions and living like you're still struggling to make rent on that first apartment. What's wrong with living modestly? Nothing if you actually needed to. But you don't, Mom. Dad left you rich. You could sell the house, downsize, invest the difference. You could step back from the company, let me run it. Enjoy your life. But instead you're clinging to everything like what, Marcus? Like I earned it. Like I spent 30 years of my life building this. You were office staff, Mom. Important office staff, but staff. Dad was the engineer. Dad was the visionary. You were support. The word had hung in the air between us. Support. Get out, I'd said quietly. Mom, get out of this office. Get out now. I'd left before he could respond, left before I could say something I'd regret. Drove home with tears blurring my vision, pulled into the garage and sat in my car for an hour. Just sat there as the sun set and the garage grew dark. That was June. By July, Marcus had stopped speaking to me entirely. By August, I'd heard through Rosa that he'd been consulting with lawyers about family business structures and competency assessments. "I think you should get your own lawyer," Rosa had said carefully. "Just in case." "In case of what?" She'd looked uncomfortable. "In case Marcus tries to challenge your position in the company. He's my son. He wouldn't," but I'd trailed off because I wasn't sure anymore. I wasn't sure what Marcus would or wouldn't do. September came, October, November, Christmas approached, and for the first time in 40 years, I spent it alone. Marcus and Elena went to her family's home in Atlanta. Didn't invite me, didn't even call. I'd sat in my living room on Christmas morning looking at the tree I'd put up more out of habit than joy and wondered how it had all gone so wrong. My phone had buzzed. A text from Margaret Merry Christmas. Come over for dinner. I'd gone grateful for the company. But even surrounded by Margaret's warm, chaotic family, I'd felt hollow. In January 2024, the letter arrived. Certified mail requiring signature. Notice of legal action. Petition to invalidate last will and testament of Robert Martinez. I'd stood in my foyer still wearing my coat, reading those words over and over. My son was suing me. My only child. The baby I'd nursed and raised and sacrificed for. He was taking me to court. The next day, I'd called Theodore Grant. "I was afraid of this," he'd said heavily. "I'm not a litigator, Viviana. You need someone who specializes in estate law and family disputes." "I don't have money for lawyers." "You have plenty of money. Robert left you comfortable." "But it's Marcus's money, too. The company that you co-built. The company Robert wanted you to have. Don't let guilt cloud your judgment here." He'd paused. "I have a colleague I trust, Sarah Bennett. She's excellent and she'll fight for you." "I don't want to fight my own son." "Then I'm afraid he's going to win." And that's how I'd ended up in that courtroom. That's how I'd ended up sitting on a hard wooden bench listening to my child accuse me of theft, watching him look at me like I was a stranger. I sat in Sarah Bennett's office 3 days after that first disastrous court appearance. Her office was in a converted townhouse in the Fan District, all exposed brick and modern furniture that somehow managed to feel warm instead of cold. Nothing like Walsh's sterile corporate setup. Sarah herself was 38, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that missed nothing. She wore slacks and a blazer, sensible heels. No flashy jewelry. No power suit intimidation tactics. "Tell me everything," she said, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. Real mugs, not disposable cups. "Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about Robert, about building the business, about Marcus and Elena, about the funeral and the will reading and the months of increasing hostility, about that transaction I knew nothing about $250,000 supposedly withdrawn in my name. She listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. "Do you have any idea how someone could have accessed your banking credentials?" she asked when I finished. "None. Robert set up all the digital banking for the company. I had login information, but I rarely used it. He always said he preferred to handle the financial transfers himself." "Did Marcus have access to those systems?" I hesitated. "He would have had to. As the operations manager, he needed to authorize payments to vendors' payroll, that sort of thing. So he had the technical access to make transfers." "Yes, but—" I stopped. "But what?" "But he was my son, but surely he wouldn't." The words felt hollow even in my own mind. Sarah leaned forward. "Viviana, I need you to be honest with yourself here. Is it possible Marcus made this transfer and framed it to look like you did it?" My coffee had gone cold in my hands. "Why would he do that?" "To build a case that you're financially irresponsible. To get you declared incompetent to manage the estate. To take control of the company and assets." "But that's crazy," I wanted to say. "Impossible. My son would never." "Except would he?" "The Marcus I'd raised wouldn't. But the Marcus who'd stood in that courtroom, who'd looked at me with such coldness I didn't know him anymore." "I need to investigate this transaction," Sarah said. "I'm going to need your permission to hire a forensic accountant, someone who can trace the digital footprint of this transfer." "How much will that cost?" She named a figure that made me wince. But she was right. I did have the money. Robert had left me comfortable. I just wasn't used to spending it, especially not on lawyers and investigators. Do it, I said. Good. Now there's something else. She pulled out another folder. Theodore Grant gave me something when I called him yesterday. Said Robert left specific instructions. My heart started beating faster. What kind of instructions? He left a sealed letter with Theodore. Instructions that it should only be opened if Marcus contested the will. Robert knew, I whispered. He knew Marcus would do this. It appears so. Sarah opened the folder, pulled out an envelope. Theodore's handwriting on the front, to be opened only in the event of legal challenge to Robert Martinez's will. She slid it across the desk to me. You should read it first. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, Robert's familiar handwriting covering both sides. My dearest Viviana, if you're reading this, then I've been gone for some time, and Marcus has done what I feared he would do. I'm so sorry, mi amor. I had hoped I was wrong. In December 2022, about 3 months before I died, something happened that broke my heart. I was in my study late one night, too sick to sleep, when I heard Marcus and Elena's voices in the kitchen. They thought I was asleep upstairs. I heard them planning Viv. Planning what they'd do when the old man finally kicks it. Elena was pushing Marcus to contest the will to get me declared incompetent so he could take over the company before I died. Marcus resisted at first, I'll give him that. But Elena was persistent. She talked about their debts, about the life she wanted to live, about how it wasn't fair that you would get everything when you were just the secretary. I heard her say those exact words, Viv. Just the secretary, Marcus argued with her. Said you'd worked as hard as I had. Said you deserved it. But Elena kept pushing, kept talking about how they were drowning in debt, how they needed the money, how you didn't need all that at your age. By the end of the conversation, Marcus was wavering. I could hear it in his voice. I didn't confront them. I was a coward about that. I was so sick, so tired, and I think part of me didn't want to spend my last months in open warfare with my own son. Instead, I prepared. I made this will airtight. I recorded that video. And I'm leaving you this letter so you'll know when Marcus challenges you, it's not spontaneous. It's been planned. And Elena is the one driving it. I've left something else with Theodore. Another video, one I recorded in January after I knew what they were planning. Watch it when the time is right. It explains everything. Fight for what we built, Viviana. Fight for yourself. You've spent your whole life making sure everyone else was taken care of. Now it's time to take care of you. I love you. I've loved you since that charity fundraiser in 1985. I'll love you wherever I am now. Always, Robert. I couldn't see the page anymore through my tears. Couldn't breathe around the tightness in my chest. He'd known. For 3 months before he died, Robert had known that our son was planning to betray me, and he'd carried that knowledge alone. Viviana, Sarah's voice was gentle. I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand. There's another video. Theodore has it. Then we need to get it. Today. She was already reaching for her phone. Theodore Grant met us at his office an hour later. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. This whole situation had taken a toll on him, too. Robert had been his friend, not just a client. I've been waiting for you to call, he said, leading us to his conference room. I knew it would come to this eventually. He opened a safe built into the wall, pulled out a small metal box. Inside was a USB drive labeled in Robert's handwriting, for Viviana, the truth. He gave this to me on January 28, 2023, Theodore said, less than 2 months before he passed. He made me promise not to give it to you unless Marcus contested the will. He said, Theodore's voice cracked slightly. He said he hoped he was wrong, that Marcus would prove him wrong. Sarah plugged the USB drive into Theodore's laptop. The screen flickered and then Robert appeared. This video was different from the first one. Robert looked worse here, thinner, weaker, his skin almost gray, but his eyes were sharp, determined. Hello, Viv, he said to the camera. If you're watching this, then I was right about Marcus. I wish I hadn't been. He adjusted his position in his chair, grimacing slightly from pain. On December 15, 2022, I overheard a conversation between Marcus and Elena. They were in our kitchen. They thought I was asleep upstairs, too doped up on pain medication to hear anything. But I heard every word. Robert's face hardened. Elena wants the money. She's been pushing Marcus for months, maybe years, to position himself to take over everything when I die. She has significant debt. I did some research after that night. Credit cards, personal loans. She owes over $180,000 to various creditors. I gasped. Marcus had never mentioned debt, had never asked for help. She married Marcus for money, Robert continued, for access to the family business. And she's been systematically trying to convince him that you don't deserve what we built, that you were just staff, that you were a burden. He leaned closer to the camera. Here's what you need to know: everything you did for this company you did without official salary for the first 15 years. We never formalized your position because we thought of it as our business, our shared asset. But legally, that means the company owes you compensation for 15 years of work. I'd never thought of it that way. I did the calculations, Robert said. At a fair market rate for the services you provided: accounting, office management, client relations, human resources, the company owes you approximately $1.2 million in back wages. I have the full accounting in the files. Theodore has copies. Theodore nodded, pulling out another folder. So when Marcus tries to argue that the 60% is unfair, Robert continued, remember, you earned that. Every penny. You earned it through 15 years of unpaid labor and 30 years of partnership. He paused, his expression softening. I also want to say this for the record: Marcus has been a good manager. He's grown the business, but he didn't build it. We did. You and me. He walked into a successful company and benefited from our years of sacrifice and hard work. His 40% was a gift, not an inheritance. He's already been generously compensated. Robert coughed, a deep rattling sound that made me flinch even though he was long dead. I'm recording this in January 2023. The doctors say I have maybe 2 months, maybe 3 if I'm lucky. I'm not afraid of dying, Viv, but I'm afraid of what Marcus and Elena will do to you after I'm gone. His eyes glistened. Fight for yourself. Fight for what we built. Don't let them make you feel small or undeserving. You are the strongest woman I've ever known. You gave up your career, a career you loved, to help me build something from nothing. You deserve everything I'm leaving you. Everything. He reached forward and the video ended. The conference room was silent except for the sound of my crying. Sarah handed me a tissue. Theodore looked away, wiping his own eyes. That's powerful testimony, Sarah finally said. And if he documented your unpaid work, calculated back wages, that's exactly the kind of evidence we need. There's more, Theodore said quietly. He pulled out another folder, this one thick with papers. Robert spent the last 2 months of his life documenting everything. Every hour Viviana worked without pay. Every task she performed. Every client relationship she maintained. He pulled together contracts, emails, calendar records going back 30 years. He slid the folder across to Sarah. He built you an airtight case, Theodore said to me, because he knew you wouldn't fight for yourself. He knew you'd need him to fight for you. Oh, Robert. Even dying, even in pain, he'd been protecting me, planning ahead, making sure I'd be okay. Sarah was already flipping through the documents, her expression growing more determined with each page. This changes everything, she said. Walsh came at you with one fraudulent transaction and a lot of dramatic rhetoric. We're going to hit back with 30 years of documented evidence showing that you earned every penny of what Robert left you. She looked up at me. But I need to ask you something, Viviana. Are you ready to fight, really fight? Because when we present this evidence, when we show that video in court, it's going to hurt Marcus. He's going to see his father on his deathbed calling him out. Are you prepared for that? Was I Marcus? Was my son? I'd carried him for 9 months, raised him for 42 years. The thought of hurting him made my chest ache. But he'd hurt me first. Had planned to hurt me. Was actively trying to take away everything Robert and I had built. Yes, I said, she said. I'm ready. Sarah moved fast. Within a week, she'd hired a forensic accountant named James Chen, a quiet man in his 50s with the kind of attention to detail that made him perfect for his job. He came to my house to go through my computer, my phone, my email records, looking for any evidence of that mysterious transaction. Walk me through your typical day in early March 2023, he said, laptop open on my kitchen table. Robert was very sick then. He was home bedridden most days. I spent most of my time taking care of him. Were you using your computer much? Barely. Maybe to check email once a day. Read the news sometimes. What about your phone? Just calls and texts. I'm not very technical. He smiled kindly. That's okay. Let me look at your email login history. He worked for 3 hours, his fingers flying over the keyboard, pulling up records and logs I didn't even know existed. Finally, he sat back. Okay, here's what I found. On March 1st, 2023, at 11:47 p.m., a login to your company email occurred from this IP address. He showed me a string of numbers. Is that my computer? No, this is your computer's IP address. He showed me a different string. The March 1st login came from somewhere else. Where? I can't tell exactly, but it's in the Richmond area. What I can tell you is that same IP address logged into the company banking system 17 minutes later, at 12:04 a.m. on March 2nd. That's when the transfer was initiated. So someone pretended to be me. Yes, someone who had your password. How would they get my password? James pulled up another screen. On February 20th, there was a password reset request for your company email. The reset link was sent to your registered email address, but that link was clicked from the same IP address that later made the transfer. I tried to follow his explanation. So someone requested a new password for me, intercepted the reset link, and used it to access my account. Exactly, which means someone had access to your email before February 20th. They saw the reset link come through and clicked it before you did. But who? There's more, James interrupted gently. I pulled the email records. On February 19th, Marcus sent an email to Rosa Garcia, your company accountant. He showed me the email on screen. Rosa, my mother, is having trouble with her banking access. She keeps forgetting her password. Can you send her a reset link to her personal email? My father asked me to help her sort this out. Thanks. I stared at the screen. Marcus told Rosa I needed help. And Rosa, being helpful, initiated the reset. The link went to your email, but someone, likely Marcus, accessed your email first and clicked the link. Marcus has my email password. Did you ever give it to him? Maybe years ago? I thought back. Maybe when he was helping me set up my smartphone in 2020, I might have given him my passwords then so he could configure everything. And you never changed them after? I felt my face heat with embarrassment. No, Robert always said I should, but I kept forgetting. It's okay, James said kindly. It's a common mistake, but it means Marcus could have been reading your emails for years, and he definitely used that access to steal your banking credentials and make that transfer. But the money, I said. Where did it go? To your personal checking account. That part is true. The question is, what happened to it after that? We spent another hour digging through my bank records, and there it was on March 2nd, the day after the deposit of withdrawal. $250,000 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. That's not my account, I said immediately. James made notes. Can you prove it? I've never even heard of this bank. Island Trust Financial. That sounds like a Caribbean tax haven or something. It's actually a legitimate U.S. bank, but they specialize in overseas accounts. And you're right, this particular account is registered in the Cayman Islands. I don't have a Cayman Islands account. I believe you. But Walsh is going to argue that you do, that you moved the money offshore to hide it. I felt sick. This is a setup. Yes, James agreed. A very careful, very deliberate setup. Someone wanted it to look like you stole that money and tried to hide it. Marcus, I whispered. Possibly, but I think there's someone else involved. Someone more technically sophisticated. He pulled up another screen. The Cayman account was opened in 2022. In your name with your social security number with identity documents that appear legitimate. Identity theft, sophisticated identity theft. This took planning, expertise. Marcus is a good businessman, but is he the kind of person who could pull off something this complex? I thought about my son. Smart, yes. Driven, absolutely. But technical, no. Marcus could barely operate the office printer. No, I said. He'd need help. Then we need to find out who helped him. Sarah brought in a private investigator. Detective Raymond Cole had spent 20 years with Richmond PD before retiring to private practice. He had the weathered look of someone who'd seen too much, but still cared enough to do something about it. Tell me about Elena, he said at our first meeting. So I did. Told him about her expensive tastes, her designer clothes, her apparent disregard for money, about the debts Robert had mentioned in his video. Have you met any of her family? Raymond asked. No. She said they weren't close. Said her parents were deceased, that she didn't have siblings. Interesting. He made a note. I'm going to do a background check. Full workup. See what I can find. 3 days later, he came back with a file that made my blood run cold. Elena Martinez isn't who she says she is, Raymond said, laying out documents on Sarah's conference table. What do you mean, her real name is Elena Vasquez? She changed it legally in 2012 after serving 3 years in prison for fraud. The room started spinning. Prison. She ran a scam in North Carolina in 2009, befriended an elderly widow, convinced her to sign over power of attorney, then systematically drained her bank accounts. Got caught when the woman's son noticed discrepancies. Elena was 24 at the time. He showed me the mugshot. It was definitely Elena, though younger with different hair. But those eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were the same. She got out in 2012, changed her name, moved to Virginia, and apparently decided to go legitimate. Got a job in marketing, worked her way up. By all accounts, she was good at her job. Until she met Marcus, I said. Until she met Marcus, Raymond agreed. A successful businessman from a wealthy family. She probably thought she'd hit the jackpot. And when Robert didn't leave Marcus, everything... She saw her payday slipping away. Sarah was reading through the documents with a grim expression. This is good. This shows motive, but we need to connect her directly to the fraudulent transaction. I'm working on that, Raymond says, he said. Elena has a friend, Jason Wright. They went to high school together, stayed in touch even while she was in prison. He's a computer programmer. Or he was until he got arrested for identity theft in 2018. Another criminal? I said faintly. Another criminal who specializes in exactly the kind of fraud we're seeing here. Digital identity theft, fake account creation, sophisticated email hacking. Raymond pulled out more papers. I pulled phone records. Elena and Jason have been in regular contact since 2020. Calls, texts. And in February 2023, right before that mysterious transaction, they called each other 15 times. Can we prove Jason created the fake account? Sarah asked. I'm working with the bank. They're reluctant to share information, but with a subpoena, we can get there. Then get the subpoena, Sarah said, and find Jason Wright. I want to talk to him. It took 2 weeks, but Raymond found Jason Wright working at a tech startup in Arlington. He agreed to talk off the record, he said, at a coffee shop halfway between Richmond and Arlington. Sarah and I drove up together. Raymond was already there when we arrived, sitting across from a thin man in his late 30s, with nervous eyes and nicotine-stained fingers. This is Jason, Sarah asked. This is Jason, Raymond confirmed. We sat down. Jason looked like he wanted to run. I didn't do anything illegal, he said immediately. Then you won't mind answering some questions, Sarah replied. I want a lawyer. You're not under arrest, Mr. Wright. This is just a conversation. But if you'd prefer to have this conversation in a courtroom under oath, we can arrange that. Jason shifted in his seat. What do you want to know? Let's start with Elena Martinez. When did you last speak with her? I don't know. Month ago, maybe. Really, because phone records show you talked to her 12 times in the last 3 weeks. His face paled. We're old friends. We talk. What do you talk about? Nothing. Life, work, nothing important. Sarah pulled out a folder, laid a document on the table. This is a bank account with Island Trust Financial, opened in 2022 under the name Viviana Martinez. Know anything about it? No. The IP address used to open this account traces back to your apartment in Arlington. Jason's hand shook as he reached for his coffee. Must be a mistake. There's no mistake, Jason. We have the digital footprint. We have your conversations with Elena. We know she paid you $20,000 last February. We found the Venmo transactions. That was a loan? Was it, or was it payment for services rendered specifically for creating a fake offshore account and stealing from a 67-year-old woman? Jason put his head in his hands. Here's what I think happened. Sarah continued, her voice hard. Elena came to you with a plan. She needed to discredit her mother-in-law. She needed to make it look like Viviana was stealing from the family business. You created the offshore account, hacked Viviana's email to get her banking credentials, and facilitated the transfer. Then you moved the money into that offshore account where Elena thought it would be safe. I want a lawyer, Jason said again, but weakly this time. You can have a lawyer, but you should know Elena's going to throw you under the bus the minute things get difficult. She's done it before. That's what she does. She uses people and discards them when they're no longer useful. Jason looked up. She said it was just to teach the old lady a lesson. Said her mother-in-law was trying to steal the family business from Marcus. Said we were helping Marcus get what was rightfully his. And you believed her. She paid me $20,000. I needed the money. So you committed felony fraud for $20,000. He didn't answer. Sarah stood up. We're done here, but Mr. Wright, you're going to be hearing from the prosecutor's office and from our lawyers. I'd suggest you get a good attorney. You're going to need one. We left him sitting at that coffee shop, his coffee cold, his future uncertain. In the car, Sarah looked at me. We have them, Viviana. We have the whole conspiracy. Elena, Jason, the fraudulent accounts. All of it. What about Marcus? I asked, the question that had been haunting me. Did he know? I don't know, Sarah admitted. The evidence suggests Elena was the mastermind, but Marcus had to know something. At minimum, he knew about the transaction. He's using it in court. But did he know it was fake? Did he know Elena set it up? That, Sarah said softly, is something we'll have to find out. The next court date was set for March 28th. We had 3 weeks to prepare. Sarah filed motions, submitted evidence, requested subpoenas for Elena's financial records, Jason's computer phone records, everything. Walsh objected to every motion, claimed we were on a fishing expedition, accused us of character assassination. But Judge Stone reviewed our evidence and granted most of our requests. Mr. Walsh, she said at a preliminary hearing, if there's even a possibility of fraud here, we need to investigate it fully. I'm not going to let this case proceed on false pretenses. Walsh's confident smirk had finally started to slip. At home, I tried to keep myself busy, cleaned the house, worked in the garden, called Rosa at the office to check on things. Everyone's asking about you, Rosa said. Wondering when you're coming back. Do they know about the lawsuit? Some rumors, but most people don't believe it. They know you, Viviana. They know you'd never steal. That made me feel marginally better. Margaret came over most evenings, brought dinner, kept me company, let me vent. Marcus came by the store today, she said one night over Chinese takeout. My chopsticks froze halfway to my mouth. What did he want? Asked if I'd heard from you, if you were okay. What did you tell him? I told him that if he cared how you were, he should call you himself instead of suing you. She picked at her low mane. He looked terrible, Viv. Exhausted. Stressed. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, he's put you through hell. So no, I don't feel that sorry. She looked at me. Have you thought about what you'll say to him when you see him in court? I'd thought about little else. Imagined a dozen different conversations. Angry ones, hurt ones, pleading ones. But I couldn't settle on the right words. What do you say to your child when they've betrayed you? When they've chosen money over love? When they've looked you in the eye and called you a thief? I don't know. I admitted. The night before the court date, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around me. This house Robert and I had chosen together. The house we'd raised Marcus in. I got up around 2 a.m., went to Marcus's old room. We'd left it mostly unchanged after he moved out his baseball trophies on the shelf, his academic awards framed on the wall. The desk where he'd done homework, complained about algebra, written his college applications. I sat on his bed and picked up the stuffed bear that had been his favorite as a child. Mr. Buttons, he'd called it. The bear was worn now, one eye missing, fur matted from too many hugs. I don't know how to fix this, I whispered to the empty room. I don't know how to get my son back. The bear had no answers, but somewhere I found my resolve. Tomorrow I'd walk into that courtroom. I'd present our evidence. I'd show everyone the truth, and then I'd let Marcus decide who he wanted to be. The morning of March 28th dawned cold and clear. I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, trying to decide what to wear. What does one wear when confronting your own child in court? When revealing that his wife is a criminal, when fighting for everything you've spent your life building? I settled on a simple navy dress and cardigan, Robert's favorite color on me. Makes your eyes look darker, he used to say. Like mysteries I could spend forever solving. God, I missed him. Missed his steady presence, his calm wisdom. He would have known what to say to Marcus, how to reach through that wall of anger and resentment. But Robert was gone, and I had to do this alone. Margaret picked me up at 8. You ready? She asked. No, but I'm going anyway. The courthouse looked different this time. Less intimidating, maybe because Sarah would be beside me. Or maybe because I'd stopped being afraid of what Marcus might think and started being angry about what he'd done. Sarah met us in the corridor outside the courtroom. She wore a charcoal suit and heels that clicked authoritatively on the marble floor. In her arms was a banker's box filled with documents. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Like I'm about to watch my son's world fall apart." "He did this, Viviana. Not you." I knew that. Intellectually, I knew that. But my heart that had loved this boy since before he was born, wasn't listening to logic. We entered the courtroom. Marcus was already there with Walsh, heads together in urgent conversation. Elena sat behind them in a cream suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. She looked calm, confident. She had no idea what was coming. Judge Stone entered right at 9. "Please be seated. We're resuming case number 2024 CV 8847, Martinez versus Martinez. Mrs. Martinez, I understand you now have legal representation." "Yes, Your Honor. Sarah Bennett for the defendant." "Very good. Mr. Walsh, I believe you were presenting evidence regarding a financial transaction." Walsh stood, buttoning his jacket. "Yes, Your Honor. As we established in our previous session, Mrs. Viviana Martinez made an unauthorized withdrawal of $250,000 from Martinez Engineering Solutions on March 1, 2023. This transaction demonstrates—" "Your Honor," Sarah interrupted, standing. "We dispute the characterization of this transaction as unauthorized. In fact, we have evidence that Mrs. Martinez did not make this transaction at all." Walsh's eyes narrowed. "Mrs. Martinez herself admitted she has login credentials for the company banking system. Having credentials and using them are two different things. We have forensic evidence that the transaction in question was made by someone else using stolen credentials." "That's a serious accusation, Ms. Bennett," Judge Stone said. "It's a serious crime, Your Honor. We're prepared to present evidence of a deliberate fraud perpetrated against Mrs. Martinez." Walsh looked at Marcus. Marcus's face had gone pale. "Proceed," the judge said. Sarah approached the bench with a laptop. "Your Honor, I'd like to call our expert witness, James Chen, forensic accountant." James was sworn in. He looked professional and unshakable in his gray suit. Sarah walked him through his findings: the IP addresses, the timeline, the password reset email that Marcus had requested from Rosa. "So let me be clear," Sarah said. "The transaction that Mr. Walsh is claiming Mrs. Martinez made was actually initiated from an IP address that is not associated with her home or her computer." "That's correct," James confirmed. "And the password used to make this transaction was obtained through a reset link that was requested by someone else." "Yes, specifically requested by Marcus Martinez in an email to the company accountant." Every head in the courtroom turned toward Marcus. He'd gone from pale to gray. Walsh jumped up. "Your Honor, this is speculation. My client requested a password reset to help his mother." "Did Mrs. Martinez ask for help with her password?" Sarah interrupted. Marcus didn't answer. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Stone said, "please answer the question." I thought she needed help," Marcus said weakly. "Did she ask you for help?" Sarah repeated. "No, but—" "So you on your own initiative requested a password reset for your mother's account, an account that gave access to company banking, and then coincidentally someone used those new credentials to transfer $250,000. Walsh was on his feet. "Your Honor, this is conjecture." "It's not conjecture, Your Honor," Sarah said. "We have the emails, we have the IP logs, we have timestamps showing exactly when and where each action occurred." She pulled out a thick folder. "We also have something else. On March 2nd, the day after this suspicious transaction, the $250,000 was transferred out of Mrs. Martinez's personal account into an offshore account registered in the Cayman Islands." I watched Elena. Her mask of calm confidence finally cracked. Just for a second, but I saw it. "Mrs. Martinez," Sarah continued, "has never opened a Cayman Islands account, has never even been to the Cayman Islands. But we traced this account back to its origin. It was opened in 2022 using Mrs. Martinez's identity documents. Documents that were stolen and used without her knowledge or consent." "This is outrageous," Walsh started. "We have a witness," Sarah said. "Jason Wright, a computer programmer who specializes in identity theft and financial fraud. He's prepared to testify that he was hired to create this fake account and facilitate this transaction." "Hired by whom?" Judge Stone asked. Sarah turned to look directly at Elena. "Hired by Elena Martinez, the petitioner's wife." The courtroom erupted. Walsh was shouting objections. Marcus was on his feet, looking between Elena and Sarah like he couldn't comprehend what was happening. Elena sat frozen, her face a mask. Judge Stone banged her gavel. "Order, I will have order." The room quieted. "Ms. Bennett," the judge said, "these are extremely serious allegations. I hope you have substantial evidence to back them up." "We do, Your Honor. We have phone records showing 15 calls between Mrs. Elena Martinez and Mr. Wright in February 2023. We have Venmo transactions showing she paid him $20,000. We have Mr. Wright's statement given to our investigator admitting that he created the fake account and facilitated the fraudulent transaction." Sarah pulled out another document. "We also have this, Your Honor. Elena Martinez's criminal record." Walsh shot to his feet. "Your Honor, prior convictions are not admissible." "They are when they establish a pattern of behavior," Sarah countered. Elena Martinez, whose legal name was Elena Vasquez until 2012, was convicted of financial fraud in 2009. She served 3 years in prison for defrauding an elderly widow out of her life savings. I watched Marcus, watched the color drain completely from his face, watched him turn to look at his wife. "Elena," his voice cracked. "What is she talking about?" Elena didn't answer, just stared straight ahead. "Mr. Martinez," Judge Stone said, "did you know about your wife's criminal history?" "No." The word came out as barely a whisper. "No, she never told me." "Did you know about the offshore account? About the plan to frame your mother for theft?" Marcus looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw my son in his eyes again. Not the angry stranger from the past months, but Marcus, my boy, scared and confused and realizing he'd been played. "No," he said, his voice stronger now. "I swear, Mom, I didn't know. Elena said she showed me the transaction, said you'd taken the money, said you were hiding it. I believed her. I thought—" He stopped, his voice breaking. "You thought what?" I asked quietly. "I thought you'd taken money you didn't deserve. Elena kept saying you hadn't earned it, that you were just Dad's wife, not his partner, that the company should be mine. And God, I believed her." "Mr. Martinez," Sarah said, not unkindly, "did your wife have significant debt?" He nodded miserably. "Yes, over $100,000 when we got married. I've been paying it down, but there's always more. She says she needs things for her career. Clothes, accessories, networking events. It never stops." "Did she pressure you to contest your father's will?" "She said it wasn't fair. Said we deserved more. Said we could barely afford our mortgage while Mom was sitting on millions." He looked at me. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have questioned it. Should have talked to you instead of listening to her." Elena finally spoke. "You're all believing lies. These people are framing me." "Mrs. Martinez," Judge Stone interrupted, her voice sharp as glass. "I'm going to stop you right there. I've heard enough." She looked at the bailiff. "Please escort Mrs. Elena Martinez into custody. I'm issuing a warrant for her arrest on charges of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit theft." "You can't do this," Elena shrieked as the bailiff approached. "Marcus, tell them you knew you were part of this." But Marcus just shook his head, backing away from her. "I didn't know, Elena. I swear I didn't know." As Elena was led out of the courtroom, still screaming, Walsh looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. "Your Honor," he said weakly, "in light of these revelations, my client would like to withdraw his petition." "Your client," Judge Stone repeated. "Mr. Walsh, did you have any knowledge of this fraud?" "Absolutely not, Your Honor. I was given information by my client and his wife. I believed it to be accurate." "Then you should have done more due diligence before bringing such serious allegations into my courtroom." She turned to Sarah. "Ms. Bennett, I assume you have additional evidence you'd like to present." "Yes, Your Honor. We have a video testimony from Robert Martinez recorded before his death explaining his wishes and his reasoning for the distribution of his estate." "Let's see it." Sarah set up the laptop. The screen flickered, and there was Robert. My Robert, thin and weak, but with fire in his eyes. I'd seen this video before, but watching it in the courtroom with Marcus sitting just a few feet away was different. Harder. Robert spoke about our partnership, about how I'd given up teaching to help him build the business, about the 15 years I'd worked without official salary. "My wife earned every penny I'm leaving her," Robert said on the screen. "She is not just my widow. She is my business partner, my equal partner in everything we built." He looked directly into the camera. "Marcus, if you're watching this in a courtroom, it means you've contested my will. It means you've chosen to believe that your mother doesn't deserve what I left her. Marcus flinched like he'd been slapped. "I need you to know something, son," Robert continued. "In December 2022, I overheard you and Elena planning this, planning to contest the will, planning to argue that your mother was incompetent or undeserving." Marcus's head dropped into his hands. "Elena was driving it. I'll give you that. But you went along with it. You didn't defend your mother. You didn't stand up for what was right." Robert's voice grew softer, sadder. "I don't know if Elena managed to manipulate you into this or if you always had this resentment toward your mother. But either way, you need to hear this. Your mother sacrificed everything for our family. Her career, her dreams, her identity as anything other than Robert's wife and Marcus's mother." He paused, coughing. "When you were 6 years old, you got sick. Pneumonia. You were in the hospital for a week and your mother never left your side. She slept in a chair next to your bed. She held your hand through every coughing fit, every fever spike. She sang to you when you were scared. I remembered. God, I remembered those long nights, Marcus's small hand in mine, his labored breathing, my terror that I might lose him. When you were 16, Robert continued, you wrecked your car, totaled it running a red light because you were texting. Your mother could have grounded you for a year, could have made your life hell. Instead, she sat with you while you cried about how stupid you'd been, and she told you that everyone makes mistakes, that what matters is learning from them. Marcus was crying now, silent tears running down his face. She has loved you with everything she has, Marcus, and you've repaid that love by trying to take away everything she helped build, by calling her incompetent, by suggesting she's a thief. Robert leaned forward and I could see the pain in his face. Not physical pain, heart pain. If you go through with this lawsuit, if you take away your mother's security and dignity, I want you to know that I will be disappointed in the man you've become. Not angry, just disappointed. Because I raised you to be better than this. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. Even Walsh looked shaken. Judge Stone removed her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Mr. Martinez, do you have anything you'd like to say? Marcus stood slowly. He looked at Walsh, then at the empty chair where Elena had been sitting. Then he looked at me. I withdraw the petition, he said. Completely. Unconditionally. I was wrong. About everything. He took a step toward me, then stopped uncertain. Mom, I don't know if you can forgive me. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness. But I am so sorry. Judge Stone spoke before I could respond. Mr. Martinez, I want to be very clear about something. Your wife will be facing criminal charges. Given what we've heard today, you may also be called as a witness in her trial. I strongly suggest you consult with a criminal attorney to ensure you're not implicated in her schemes. I didn't know, Marcus said desperately. I swear I didn't know about the fake accounts or Jason Wright or any of it. That may be true, the judge said. But you did know about the transaction. You used it as the basis for this lawsuit. At minimum, you showed poor judgment. At worst, she left the implication hanging. She turned to me. Mrs. Martinez, your late husband's will is hereby affirmed. All assets bequeathed to you remain in your control. The petition to invalidate the will is dismissed with prejudice. She banged her gavel. This court is adjourned. The corridor outside the courtroom was chaos. Reporters, word had gotten out about the criminal fraud angle, shouted questions. Camera flashes went off. Sarah and Raymond flanked me, guiding me through the crowd to a side exit. Mrs. Martinez, do you feel vindicated? Will you pursue charges against your son? How does it feel to know your daughter-in-law was a con artist? We made it to Sarah's car and drove in silence back to her office. Once inside, away from the cameras and questions, I finally let myself fall apart. I cried for an hour. Cried for Robert, who had carried the knowledge of our son's betrayal alone. Cried for the years of sacrifice that Marcus had dismissed. Cried for the loss of the relationship I'd thought I had with my son. Sarah sat with me, handed me tissues, didn't try to make it better with empty platitudes. When I finally stopped crying, she made tea. What happens now? I asked. Elena will be arraigned. Given her prior conviction and flight risk, I doubt she'll get bail. Jason Wright will likely take a plea deal in exchange for testifying against her. As for Marcus, she paused. That's more complicated. Will he be charged? That depends on what the prosecutor can prove. If he genuinely didn't know about Elena's plan, if he was just a victim of her manipulation, he might not face charges. But he'll be investigated. His finances, his communications, everything will be scrutinized. He's going to lose everything, isn't he? Possibly. His marriage, certainly. His reputation. Maybe his position at the company, depending on how the board reacts. I thought about Marcus as a little boy. Thought about him learning to ride a bike, falling and scraping his knees, getting up and trying again. Thought about him at his high school graduation, so proud in his cap and gown. Thought about him on his wedding day, looking at Elena like she hung the moon. How had we gotten here? I need to talk to him, I said. Viviana, are you sure that's a good idea? You've been through so much. He's still my son. Sarah studied me for a long moment. You're a better person than I would be in your situation. I'm not better. I'm just a mother. And mothers don't give up on their children, no matter what. Marcus's house looked the same from the outside. Same perfect lawn, same expensive cars in the driveway, though Elena's Mercedes was gone, probably impounded as evidence. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, working up the courage to knock. Finally, I walked to the front door and rang the bell. Marcus answered. He looked terrible. Eyes red and swollen, face haggard, still wearing the suit from court, but with the tie loosened and the jacket discarded. Mom, his voice cracked. I didn't expect you to come here. Can I come in? He stepped back and I entered the house I'd only been in a handful of times. Elena had decorated it in severe modern style, all white and chrome and sharp edges. No warmth, no personality. We sat in the living room, Marcus on one couch, me on another. An expanse of white carpet between us that might as well have been an ocean. I don't know where to start, Marcus said. Start at the beginning. When did Elena first suggest contesting the will? He was quiet for a long moment. About a week after Dad's funeral. We just heard the will reading. Elena was angry. Said it wasn't fair that you got everything when I'd worked at the company for years. And you agreed. At first, no. I told her Dad had his reasons, that you deserved it. He looked up at me. I meant that, Mom. I did. I remembered all the years you worked without pay. I knew you'd earned it. But Elena kept pushing, kept showing me bills, kept talking about how stressed we were financially. I didn't know then how much of that debt was hers from before we got married. She made it sound like we were drowning because of our lifestyle now. He ran his hands through his hair. She showed me the transaction, said she'd been looking through company records and found it. Said you'd taken money right before Dad died. Asked if I thought that was strange. If maybe you'd been taking money all along and we just hadn't noticed. And you believed her. I wanted to believe there was an explanation. I called you. Remember back in May, asked about your involvement in the company finances. I did remember. That uncomfortable call where he'd questioned my understanding of the business. I thought he was just being condescending. I hadn't realized he was building a case against me. I told you everything was fine, I said. You did. But Elena said that's what you'd say if you were hiding something. She said people who are guilty always act innocent. He laughed bitterly. Turns out the person acting innocent was actually guilty, just not you. Did you ever suspect her? No. He shook his head. Never. I loved her, Mom. I thought she loved me. I thought we were partners building a life together. I had no idea she was using me. He started crying again. She told me about her family. Said her parents died in a car accident when she was 21. Said she was alone in the world. Said that's why family was so important to her, why she wanted us to have what was rightfully ours. It was all lies. All of it. Her parents are alive and living in North Carolina. I called them today. They said Elena, they still call her Elena Vasquez, hasn't spoken to them since she went to prison. They didn't even know she'd gotten married. I'm sorry, Marcus. He looked at me through his tears. Why are you apologizing? I'm the one who should be sorry. I accused you of stealing. I dragged you to court. I believed a criminal over my own mother. You believed your wife. That's not a crime. It should be. He wiped his face with his sleeve. Dad knew. That video. He knew what Elena was doing. Knew what I was doing. And he died knowing his son was going to betray you. Your father loved you. Even at the end. He was disappointed in me. You hurt him. He was hurt. But he still loved you. Just like I still love you. Marcus looked up, surprise and hope warring on his face. After everything I've done, you're my son. I'll always love you, even when you make mistakes, even when you hurt me. I don't deserve that. Love isn't about deserving Marcus. It's about choosing. Every day I choose to love you, even on the days when it's hard. He crossed the room, then fell to his knees in front of my chair. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I pulled him into my arms the way I used to when he was small and scared. Let him cry against my shoulder. Stroked his hair like I did when he was 6 and sick with pneumonia. I know, I whispered. I know you are. We sat like that for a long time, my son and me, trying to find our way back to each other through the wreckage. The next few months were hard. Elena was denied bail flight risk prior conviction. Jason Wright took a plea deal and testified against her. The trial was scheduled for September. Marcus and I filed for an emergency divorce on his behalf. Given Elena's criminal charges and fraud, it was granted quickly. He moved out of the house, couldn't stand to be in the place they'd shared, and into a small apartment downtown. He came to dinner every Sunday. At first it was awkward. We'd sit at the kitchen table with too much food and not enough words. But slowly, we found our rhythm again. I'm starting therapy, Marcus told me in May. Dr. Richardson says I have issues with self-worth, that I was vulnerable to Elena's manipulation because I always felt like I was trying to prove myself. Prove yourself to whom? Dad. You? Myself. He pushed his mashed potatoes around his plate. Dr. Richardson says I tied my value to material things because I thought that's what would make me worthy of your pride. Marcus, I've always been proud of you, but I didn't feel worthy of it. I saw you and Dad sacrifice so much work so hard, live so modestly. And I wanted more, nicer things, a bigger life. And I felt guilty for wanting it, so I resented you for making me feel guilty. That's a lot of complicated emotions. Yeah, Dr. Richardson says I'm a mess. He smiled weakly. But I'm working on it. I reached across the table and took his hand. I'm proud of you for doing the work. Even after everything. Especially after everything. It's easy to be proud when things are going well. It's harder and more meaningful to be proud of someone who messes up and then does the hard work of becoming better. In June, Marcus came to the company for the first time since the trial. Rosa hugged him, which surprised us both. Your father would want you here, she told him. And Viviana wants you here, so stop being stubborn and come back to work. We restructured his role. He was no longer trying to run everything. Instead, he focused on what he was good at: client relations, business development. I handled the financial oversight and strategic planning. We met weekly to discuss major decisions. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, times when old hurts resurfaced. But we were trying, both of us. In July, Margaret organized a dinner party. You need to get out, she insisted. Meet people. Remember what it's like to have fun. I went reluctantly and found myself actually enjoying it, laughing at stories, sharing my own, feeling like Viviana again, not just Marcus's mother or Robert's widow. One of the guests was a widower named Thomas. He'd lost his wife 2 years ago. We talked about grief, about loss, about the strange experience of rebuilding a life alone. You're never really alone, though, Thomas said. You carry them with you, the people you've loved. They shape who you become. I thought about Robert, about how his love and planning had protected me even after death, about how his final video had reminded Marcus of who he was supposed to be. Yes, I agreed. They stay with us. Thomas asked if he could call me sometime, maybe have coffee. I surprised myself by saying yes. September came with falling leaves and cooler temperatures, and Elena's trial. I attended every day. Sarah said I didn't have to, but I needed to see it through, needed to understand how this woman had fooled us all. Elena looked different in prison orange, smaller somehow, less polished. The expensive clothes and jewelry that had been her armor were gone. The prosecution laid out the case methodically. The fake offshore account, the stolen identity, the partnership with Jason Wright, the Venmo payments, the phone records. Elena's attorney tried to argue that she'd been trying to help her husband, that she genuinely believed I'd stolen from the company and was trying to prove it. But the jury didn't buy it. How could they when the prosecution showed evidence of her prior conviction, when they heard from Jason Wright about how she'd recruited him specifically because of his hacking skills, Marcus testified. I watched him on the stand answering questions about his marriage, about Elena's debts, about how she'd slowly poisoned him against me. Did you know about your wife's criminal history? The prosecutor asked. No. She told me her name had always been Martinez, that her parents were dead, that she'd worked her way up from nothing. His voice was hollow. Everything she told me was a lie. Elena stared at him from the defense table, no emotion on her face, just calculating coldness. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Judge Stone, the same judge from our civil case, sentenced her to 12 years. Federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 8 years. As they led Elena out, she looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time since the trial started. You think you won, she said. But you lost your son. He'll never forgive himself for what he did to you. That guilt will poison every moment you have together. So congratulations, Viviana. You got your money, and I got my revenge. The bailiff pulled her away before I could respond. But her words haunted me that night. Was she right? Would the guilt poison Marcus's relationship with me? Would we ever truly move past this? March rolled around again. 1 year since that first terrible court date. Marcus and I stood at Robert's grave on the anniversary of his death. I'd brought yellow roses, his favorite. Marcus brought a bottle of Robert's preferred bourbon. Think he'd be okay with me leaving this here? Marcus asked. Your father would think you're ridiculous for wasting good bourbon on a cemetery. I smiled through my tears. But he'd appreciate the gesture. We stood in silence for a while. The March wind was still cold, but there were hints of spring early crocuses pushing through the dead grass buds forming on the trees. Mom, Marcus said quietly, Elena was wrong. About what? About the guilt poisoning us. I do feel guilty, every single day, but it's not poisoning anything. It's teaching me, reminding me to be better, to do better. He knelt down, placed the bourbon bottle next to the headstone. I'm sorry, Dad, for disappointing you, for not being the son you deserved, but I'm trying to be better. I'm going to keep trying every day for the rest of my life. He stood, brushed dirt from his knees. Dr. Richardson says I need to forgive myself eventually, but I don't think I'm ready for that yet. Maybe someday. Your father forgave you, I said. Even in that video, even when he was hurt and disappointed, he still loved you, still wanted the best for you. How do you know? Because he didn't cut you out. He left you your 40% of the company. He left you a path back to the family. If he'd truly given up on you, he wouldn't have done that. Marcus considered this. I never thought of it that way. Your father was a planner. He planned for every possibility, including the possibility that you'd realize your mistake and come back to us. We walked back to the car together. Thomas was waiting in the parking lot he'd driven me, given Marcus and me space for this private moment. Thomas, Marcus said, shaking his hand. Good to see you. You too, son. Son. Thomas had started calling Marcus that a few months ago. It had surprised us all. Thomas and I were just dating, nothing serious, but Marcus hadn't objected. If anything, he seemed to appreciate having another father figure in his life. We went to lunch together, the three of us. Talked about the business, about Thomas's volunteer work at the library, about Marcus's new apartment. I'm thinking of buying a house, Marcus said. Something smaller than the old place, less pretentious. Good plan, I said. Big houses are overrated. It's the people inside that matter. After lunch, as Thomas and I were leaving, Marcus stopped me. Mom, I need to tell you something. What is it? I'm grateful. For everything. For your forgiveness. For giving me another chance. For not giving up on me. He swallowed hard. I don't know what I did to deserve a mother like you, but I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it. I cupped his face in my hands. You don't have to earn my love, Marcus. You have it. Always have. Always will. I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. We hugged there in the restaurant parking lot, and I felt something shift. Not healing, that would take more time, but hope. Real, solid hope that we were going to be okay. I was in my kitchen, the same kitchen where Robert and I had shared thousands of meals, where Marcus had done homework and complained about vegetables, where so much life had happened. The oldies station played on the radio. Sam Cooke singing What a Wonderful World. I was making pasta sauce Robert's recipe that he'd learned from his grandmother, stirring the pot, humming along with the music. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus bringing someone to dinner tomorrow. Her name is Rebecca. She's a teacher. I think you'll like her. A teacher, like I'd been once upon a time. I smiled and texted back. Looking forward to meeting her. Another text, this one from Sarah Jury, came back in the Wright case. Guilty on all counts. Justice served. Jason Wright had finally gone to trial. 2 years for his role in the fraud. Light sentence because he'd cooperated, but still. Justice. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff, the kind Robert used to save for special occasions. But I'd learned something over the past year and a half. Every day you survive is a special occasion. The song changed. Elvis now. Can't help falling in love. I set down my wine glass and did something spontaneous. Something Robert would have loved. I danced, right there in my kitchen in my bare feet and old jeans and Robert's worn flannel shirt that I'd kept because it still smelled like him. I danced like I was young again, like I didn't have 70 years of history and heartbreak weighing me down. I spun and laughed and sang along with Elvis. The doorbell rang. I opened it to find Thomas holding a bouquet of daisies, simple, cheerful. So different from the roses that had marked difficult moments this past year. I heard music, he said. Thought I'd crash the party. There's pasta sauce on the stove and wine in the fridge. You're just in time. He stepped inside, set the flowers on the counter, and pulled me back into the kitchen. May I have this dance? You may. We swayed together to the oldies, and I felt, content. Not the wild happiness of youth, but something better. Something earned. The doorbell rang again. Marcus with a woman I'd never met. Rebecca with kind eyes and a warm smile. Mom, this is Rebecca. Rebecca, my mother Viviana. It's wonderful to meet you, Mrs. Martinez. Marcus has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope, I said, winking at Marcus. We had dinner together, the 4 of us around my kitchen table, passing plates, sharing stories, laughing at Marcus's terrible jokes. At one point I looked around the table and felt Robert's presence. Not sad, not haunting, just there, part of the warmth, part of the love. Thank you, I thought, for planning ahead, for protecting me, for believing in us. After dinner, Marcus helped me wash dishes while Thomas and Rebecca talked about their shared love of mystery novels. She's wonderful, I told Marcus quietly. She is, and Mom, she knows. Everything. About Elena, about the trial, about how badly I messed up. She knows, and she's here anyway. That's how you know it's real. Is that how you knew with Thomas? I thought about it. With Thomas I knew because he makes me laugh, because he lets me be sad when I need to be sad, because he doesn't try to replace your father, he just offers something different, something new. I'm glad you have him. I'm glad you have Rebecca. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. Later, after everyone had left, I sat in Robert's study, the room where he'd recorded those videos, where he'd planned and schemed to protect me. I opened the drawer where I kept his letter, the one Theodore had given me. I'd read it so many times the paper was soft as cloth. Fight for what we built, Viviana. Fight for yourself. I did, I whispered to the empty room. I fought, and I won. Not just in court. I'd won something bigger. I'd reclaimed myself, my voice, my value. I'd spent so many years being Robert's wife, Marcus's mother, the office manager, the support staff, losing myself in other people's needs and identities. But through the pain of the past year and a half, I'd found Viviana again. Not the girl who met Robert in 1985. Not even the woman who built a business while raising a child. Someone new, someone stronger. Someone who could dance alone in her kitchen and feel complete. I pulled out my journal I'd started keeping one after the trial doctor. Richardson's suggestion that Marcus had passed along. September 28th, I wrote, Today was a good day. Marcus brought Rebecca to dinner. She seems lovely. Thomas brought flowers. We danced. We laughed. We were a family, not the family I started with, but a family nonetheless. I've been thinking about Robert's videos, about his planning, about how even in death he was taking care of me. And I realized something that's love. Real love, not grand gestures or expensive gifts. Love is planning ahead. Love is protection. Love is saying, I believe in you, and meaning it. Marcus and I are healing. Slowly. Some days are harder than others, but we're trying. We're showing up. We're choosing each other even when it's difficult. Elena is in prison. Jason Wright is in prison. Justice has been served. But more than that, I'm free. Free from fear. Free from doubt. Free from the need to make myself small so others can feel big. Robert once told me that I was the strongest woman he'd ever known. At the time, I didn't believe him. I felt ordinary, small, just someone doing what needed to be done. But I understand now. Strength isn't about being loud or powerful or always getting your way. Strength is about getting up every day and trying again. About loving people even when they hurt you. About fighting for what matters. I am strong. I am worthy. I am enough. And I'm still here. Still dancing. Still living. Still loving. That's my victory. I closed the journal and turned off the desk lamp. Walked through the house, turning off lights, checking locks. The same routine I'd done for 40 years. But tonight it felt different. Felt like mine. In my bedroom, I changed into pajamas and sat on the edge of the bed. Robert's side was still his side. I couldn't quite bring myself to sleep in the middle. Maybe someday. On the nightstand was a photo of us from our wedding day, young and hopeful and ready to take on the world. "We did good, didn't we?" I said to the photo. "Not perfect, but good." I lay down, pulled the covers up, and smiled in the darkness. Tomorrow I'd wake up and make coffee. I'd go to the office and work on the new contract Rosa had mentioned. I'd call Thomas and maybe plan that trip to the mountains he'd been suggesting. I'd text Marcus and tell him to bring Rebecca to Sunday dinner. I'd live. Because that's what you do when you survive the fire. When you come out the other side scarred but standing. You keep living. You keep dancing. You keep choosing joy, even when it's hard. The last thing I thought before falling asleep was this: thank you. To Robert for his love and planning. To Sarah for her fierce advocacy. To Marcus for choosing to come back. To myself for fighting when it would have been easier to give up. Thank you for this messy, complicated, beautiful life. And in the morning, when sunlight streamed through the windows and Sam Cooke played on the radio and the coffee maker burbled its familiar song, I would dance again. Because I was Viviana Martinez, builder of businesses, fighter of battles, mother, widow, survivor, and I was enough.